The story of Osman I is not just the story of a warrior, it is the story of a visionary leader who transformed a small frontier tribe into the beginning of a great empire. When Osman became the leader of the Kaya tribe, he controlled only a small territory in northwestern Anatolia. He had limited resources, few soldiers, and powerful enemies around him. Yet through patience, strategy, and determination, he created a foundation that would survive for centuries. Osman's greatest achievement was not simply conquering land. His true success was building a community based on loyalty, organization, and shared purpose. He united warriors, farmers, merchants, and craftsmen under his leadership. This unity allowed his small state to grow stronger with every passing year. Osman also understood the importance of diplomacy. He formed relationships with different groups and gained support from people who believed in his leadership. His reputation for fairness helped him attract followers beyond his own tribe. Although the Ottoman state was small during Osman's lifetime, the principles he established became the foundation for future Ottoman rulers. His son, Orhan Gazi, inherited not just a territory, but a growing vision. Orhan continued his father's campaigns and expanded the state even further. The capture of Bursa shortly after Osman's death became a major milestone. Bursa became the first important capital of the Ottoman state and symbolized the transformation from a small frontier beylik into an organized kingdom. Over the next centuries, Osman's descendants would expand this small state into one of the longest-lasting empires in history. The Ottoman Empire would eventually control vast territories across Europe, Asia, and Africa, influencing politics, culture, and trade for more than 600 years. But everything began with one man and one small frontier settlement near Suat. Osman I's legacy reminds us that great historical changes often begin with small beginnings. A simple tribe on the edge of Anatolia became the foundation of an empire that changed the course of world history. This was the beginning of the Ottoman Empire. By the early 14th century, Osman I had transformed his small frontier principality into a rising regional power. His victories against the Byzantine frontier were no longer isolated raids. They had become part of a long-term strategy to secure land, strengthen trade routes, and unite the surrounding Turkish tribes. One of the most significant turning points came in 1302 during the Battle of Baphius. Near the city of Nicomedia, Osman's forces confronted a Byzantine army sent to stop his expansion. Although the Byzantines were experienced, Osman's highly mobile cavalry and deep knowledge of the local terrain gave his army a decisive advantage. The battle ended in a major Ottoman victory. It was the first time that Osman defeated a large Byzantine force in open battle. News of the victory spread rapidly across Anatolia, attracting new warriors, tribal leaders, merchants, and scholars to Osman's growing state. After Baphius, many Byzantine villages and frontier towns accepted Ottoman rule. Some surrendered peacefully, while others were captured after long sieges. Osman understood that lasting success depended not only on military victories but also on stable administration. Newly captured settlements were protected, trade was encouraged, and local people were generally allowed to continue their daily lives. Among Osman's greatest ambitions was the city of Bursa. This wealthy Byzantine city occupied an important strategic position and controlled major trade routes. Although Osman began the long siege of Bursa, the city would not fall during his lifetime. As the years passed, Osman's health gradually declined. Leadership responsibilities increasingly passed to his son, Orhan, who continued the military campaigns with the same determination. Together, father and son ensured that the Ottoman state continued to grow even during Osman's final years. Around 1324, or according to some historical sources 1326, Osman I passed away. Shortly afterward, Orhan successfully captured Bursa and made it the first major capital of the Ottoman state. Although Osman did not live to see the city's conquest, it was his vision, leadership, and decades of struggle that made the victory possible. By the time of his death, Osman had achieved something extraordinary. He had transformed a small tribal beylik into a powerful and expanding state whose future would shape the history of Europe, Asia, and the Middle East for centuries to come.
As Osman I secured his position as the leader of the Kayı tribe, he understood that survival depended on more than bravery alone. His small frontier state stood between two worlds. To the west lay the Byzantine Empire, weakened but still protected by strong castles and experienced soldiers. To the east, the Mongols continued to influence the remains of the Seljuk Sultanate. Rather than launching reckless attacks, Osman carefully planned his strategy. He strengthened his army, trained skilled horsemen, and built trust with neighboring Turkish tribes. Warriors from different frontier communities gradually joined his banner, believing that Osman offered both opportunity and justice. Life on the frontier was never peaceful. Byzantine border raids were common, and competition between local rulers was constant. Every victory or defeat could determine the future of an entire community. Osman realized that controlling strategic roads, fertile farmland, and small fortresses would be more valuable than seeking large battles. His warriors, known for their speed and mobility, often relied on surprise attacks. They knew the mountains, forests, and valleys of northwestern Anatolia better than their enemies. Instead of fighting long and costly battles, they targeted isolated frontier positions and disrupted enemy supply routes. One of Osman's greatest strengths was his ability to inspire loyalty. Many people living near the frontier chose to support him because they believed his rule would bring greater stability and fair treatment. Merchants found safer trade routes, farmers returned to cultivate abandoned land, and craftsmen settled in growing towns under his protection. As Osman's influence expanded, neighboring Byzantine commanders became increasingly concerned. What had once seemed like a small tribal state was steadily transforming into an organized political and military power. Reports of his victories spread across the frontier, attracting even more followers. By the end of the 13th century, Osman was no longer simply the leader of a small tribe. He had become one of the most influential frontier rulers in Anatolia. His growing state was laying the foundations of a dynasty that would eventually rule across 3 continents. But Osman's most famous victories, and the events that truly marked the birth of the Ottoman Empire, were still to come. In the next part, we will explore the important battles, the capture of key Byzantine strongholds, and how Osman's achievements secured his place in world history.
Here imagine standing on the rugged frontier of Anatolia in the late 13th century. Powerful empires surrounded the region, but none could fully control it. The once mighty Seljuk Sultanate was weakening under Mongol pressure, while the Byzantine Empire struggled to defend its eastern borders. Between these two fading powers, small Turkish frontier states, known as beyliks, began competing for land, influence, and survival. Among these small states was one that seemed insignificant. It occupied only a modest territory around Soğut, with a limited number of warriors and resources. Few people at the time could have imagined that this tiny frontier principality would one day become one of the greatest empires in world history. That principality was led by a remarkable man named Osman I. Osman was born around 1258, the son of Ertuğrul Bey, leader of the Kayı tribe of the Oghuz Turks. His childhood was shaped by a harsh frontier life. From an early age, he learned horse riding, archery, swordsmanship, leadership, and tribal traditions. These skills were essential for survival in a region where conflict was a constant part of daily life. When Ertugrul died around 1280 or 1281, Osman inherited leadership of the Beylik. He faced enormous challenges. His territory was small, neighboring rulers were powerful, and the Byzantine frontier was filled with fortified towns. Instead of waiting for stronger enemies to attack, Osman began strengthening his army, building alliances with neighboring Turkish tribes, and organizing his people around a common purpose. Unlike many rulers who relied only on military force, Osman also focused on winning the loyalty of local communities. His reputation for justice and fair leadership attracted new supporters, skilled warriors, craftsmen, and merchants. Gradually, his influence spread across the frontier. This combination of military skill, diplomacy, and leadership laid the foundation for something much greater than anyone expected. What began as a small tribal state was slowly transforming into a new political power. But Osman's greatest achievements were still ahead. His campaigns against Byzantine frontier fortresses would change the balance of power in northwestern Anatolia and mark the true beginning of the Ottoman Empire.